Hi everyone, Naka Onolofor to make the invisible visible. And I first of all want to thank all of my new subscribers for joining my community. Welcome. We are going to be having some great conversation, talking about some topics that you may not discuss very often. So before I get into the topic here, I want to start by saying that when I talk about Black men, I'm specifically talking about African American men. So what I am going to discuss, for the most part, doesn't really apply to African men and other men of African descent outside of being African American. So I just want to clear that up. So this topic really is one that I find when Black women speak about, they are often gaslighted. I have been gaslighted many times when I try to talk about my experience feeling unseen when I lived in Minnesota. So you heard the word Minnesota, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, well, clearly that's why she was invisible, because there were no Black men there. That is not correct. There were actually, quite a bit of African American men that I was around for the 15 years that I lived in Minnesota. So I just want to start off really by talking about the psychology of what happens when a young woman is in a community around, her people, Black men, and feels unseen. Okay, so we're going to start off with the psychology, and then I'll go into the actual story of, some of my experiences. Most men from their own respective races primarily date and seem interested in women within their own race. And so what I mean by that is, and let me just clear this up. In no way am I against interracial dating, interracial marriages. I have no issue with that. However, I'm just highlighting the fact that in most cases, when you see, say, a Chinese man, oftentimes he is with a Chinese woman. Or if you see a Latino man, he oftentimes is with a Latina. When you see an Indian man, in many cases, if you see who he is dating or who he is expressing interest in and so forth, oftentimes it is someone, an Indian woman in this case, or someone of his own culture, ethnicity, or race. That is just typical. That is very normal in this society. So why I'm bringing this up is because I'm going to be describing something that I find very unusual and strange, is that in my experience in Minnesota, at the time that I lived there for 15 years, the majority, I'm not going to say the majority, but a lot of Black men were, when you saw them out and about, when you saw them, in your community, oftentimes they were it appeared to be they were in relationships with white women, but also, married to white women as well. But then in terms of even the dynamics as far as who's expressing interest, okay, so let's just even move away from the marriages and the dating, just plain old who is getting looks, who is getting compliments, all that kind of stuff. A lot of times you would find that the Black men would show a strong preference for white women and women who were not Black. So I'm highlighting this because, again, to me, this is a bit unusual, because why is this happening so prominently within the Black culture within this, I'm speaking now about my experience in Minnesota. I'm not speaking about, across the United States. I'm not speaking about globally. Right now, we're talking about my experience in the city of Minneapolis, St. Paul, where I lived for 15 years. Why is it that this occurrence is happening so predominantly amongst Black men? Again, this is, I don't know if I can call it a trend or what it is, but why is it so pervasive amongst Black men? And again, when you see men of other races, other cultures, other ethnicities, that is not the case. So I had to ask myself this question when I was living there: is what is going on? What is happening? And what I can say is, when I first moved to Minnesota, I was 18 years old and I was going to college, which is why I moved there, to attend college. A Black woman said to me, and I remember this distinctly on campus, that Black women, this is me quoting her, Black women are not in vogue here. And at that time, mind you, I'm 18. So I'm like, okay. I don't know what to do with that information. I don't really know what you mean by that. Black women, in my mind, I'm like, black women are globally, we're who wouldn't be interested in us, right? Like everyone wants to look like us and emulate us. And anyway, but gradually within several weeks and months, I saw exactly what she was talking about. And essentially what she was saying is that, again, the word in vogue, meaning we are not what's popular. We are not the preference. We are not the trend. and so let me just say that obviously there are African American men in Minnesota that do date and marry and are interested in black women, right? So of course, what I'm saying now is there's no absolute that all of the African American men are dating outside their race. No. But if you have been to Minnesota, and again, I'm speaking about Minneapolis, St. Paul, the city, if you have been to that area, it is very visible, right? So you can go there and see with your own two eyes that there is a trend that, oftentimes you will see, not only will you see, black men with white women, but also recently a lot more black women with white men. And again, this video is specifically focused on the black men with white women. That's probably a whole nother video. I'll be honest with you, I can't make that video because I've never dated a white man. But so the psychology, as a woman a young woman at that time, who is going off to college and excited about life and excited about just exploring and interested in black men, wanting to, eventually date and all of that, it is very psychologically damaging to see that, you are not the preferred option of men in your own culture, in your own race. There is something that you might hear a lot as far as black women saying, we don't feel protected, we don't feel, safe and so forth. That is very real. And to take it a step further, and let's just remove this from the dating and marriage piece of it, because I feel like that can open up a whole nother can of worms when you talk about dating and marriage. Let's just keep it on just simply feeling like a black man has your back. Like if something were to happen, I want to feel like, okay, if something went down at a festival or if I'm out at a mall, that I can lean on my brother to provide some level of safety, even if he doesn't know me, even if we don't know each other, because that is you would think being a woman, that is one of the, advantages, societal advantages that you have, is that, you look to men to some degree, right, as protectors and providers and so forth. And even if they're random men, from what I learned about men and how they work is that instinct kicks in. If there's some kind of danger or something like that, they want to protect and keep the women, all women, but, specifically women that they identify with, keep them safe. So psychologically, it is very traumatizing to, be in a community and you can feel and see, right? Like feel and see that the men that look like you, the men that, you would assume would have a desire to, be close to you, are not only are they not interested in dating you or marrying you, but not even saying hi. Not even, I remember times being at the grocery store or out somewhere and, there would be a black man and not even someone that I wanted to date. And mind you, in Minnesota, just to kind of give you a picture, even though there are black people, we are not the majority. So anytime you see a black person, your instinct sometimes is, and not every black person, but depending on the black person and depending on the social situation, especially if you two are the only two black people amongst a lot of white folks, your instinct is to kind of acknowledge them. whether it's through a head nod or, a little smile or something like that. It's just like nuances, right? Like body language, unspoken things that Black people do, that people do. So to even be in a situation where a Black man will go out of his way, like he sees you walking toward him and he will go out of his way down a whole nother aisle of the grocery store just so that you two don't walk past each other, so he doesn't have to acknowledge you. Or let's just say if you are in a situation where you happen to, walk past each other, he is looking down. He is not even giving you eye contact. So when I say I feel invisible, I mean literally. Like I'm not, like literally invisible. And again, and we're not talking about, I feel like all these guys should be hollering at me. I feel like all these men should be, telling me I'm beautiful everywhere. No. I'm saying just down to the core of being a human being, the natural acknowledgement that you should deserve as a human being, and specifically as a Black woman. So, what it looked like is, you give a slight smile when you're out and about in public. You give a slight smile to a Black man, he frowns at you. You slightly wave, he doesn't wave back. You go to say hello, he runs and hides and goes down a whole nother aisle to avoid you. This went on for 15 years. Now, now you're asking yourself, well, what does that mean? Did you date other men of other races? And that's a whole nother video, which is, I ended up dating African men, whole nother video. But, and again, and I want to reiterate, I'm not saying every African American man, but many of them, I mean, again, and you can ask other Black women who live there, that this experience is one that is real. And we are often gaslighted. When we talk about it, Black women are often gaslighted, because people can't believe and imagine that something like this is happening. And I don't know why. I don't have answers. My solution was moving away. So I now live in the Washington, D.C. metro area because I could not deal with that. I didn't want to expose my daughter to that. And I still to this day don't get it. It still doesn't make sense. And you can, and again, if you want to hone in on Minnesota, I'm actually from Wisconsin. I'm from, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And this is not an issue there. I mean, there's other issues, but what I'm describing now is not an issue. You see Black couples together all the time. So what I'm talking about is whatever's happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul is, I'm not going to say it's exclusive to Minneapolis and St. Paul, but it's something that people have called, Minneapolis, St. Paul in Minnesota, the Mecca of interracial relationships. And so, you can do whatever you want with that. But again, the psychology and what happens to a Black woman who does not look mixed, who does not look white, who does not want to look mixed or white, who is very proud of being Black and having African features and so forth. What happens to the psychology of that woman, that Black woman who feels invisible? Okay, so this is why there's going to be another part to this. We're still talking about the Black male gaze and the gaze, in this case, the gaze that did not exist because I, again, felt invisible. And in many ways I was. And so real quick, there's this whole fit, feminine, friendly thing going around that Black women, we need to be fit, we need to be friendly and feminine and all that. And I just want to say that, you all may be asking yourself, well, how did you look? And if you want to see full body photos of me and so forth and videos, you can go to my IG, which is linked here on my YouTube page. I was smaller at that time than I am now. I was about, still plus size, but smaller. So again, I say that to say there was nothing wrong with me. I mean, and then again, it doesn't mean that I'm perfect, but I don't believe that the way regardless of how a woman looks, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Regardless of how a woman looks, I believe she is still impacted by this, particularly in that community in Minnesota. And please comment in the chat here if you please put comments if you are experiencing this, if it's something that you have seen before, maybe in your own communities. I'm not saying that this is exclusive to Minnesota and Minneapolis and St. Paul, but it's real. And if anyone tries to gaslight you and tell you it's not, send them this video, because it's a thing, and it has happened, and it's still happening. It's not getting any better. There are some places that you can go in the United States and in the world where, Black people are warm toward one another, hospitable, inviting. In my experience, for 15 years, for the most part, not in all, but I have experienced cold and dismissive and being ignored. And so I am an author, and my book is called, you can see it here, My Own Gaze. My Own Gaze. And it's a memoir. Memoir of a time in my life where I felt invisible. And it's not only about my experience in Minnesota, but I talk about feeling invisible. And if that message resonates with you, please go to the description of this video where you can find more information about my book. It is available on Amazon and on my website. Thank you so much for watching. And there will be a part, I'm getting up to part 4 about the Black male gaze. So stay tuned for more. Bye.